Greetings, namaste. So let us continue to enjoy the further stories that are of pertinence and immense significance. And let me start with something from a little bit uh, that we have already covered, and then we will go on to the story of Priyavrata, Rishabdev, and Bharat. When an individual starts identifying completely with his or her intellect or ego or the sense of doership, this is when he forgets his own true divine nature. And because of that, he becomes full of ignorance and vanity. There is a force, the all destroying time, which will use either some form of disease or an accident or death as his weapon and ultimately destroy the body of which we are so proud and egotistical about. So once man forgets his divine nature and runs after the fleeting pleasures of the world, he becomes bound by his deeds. His deeds decide his future births. Deeds, actions, karma, whether good or bad, one is a golden chain and the other one is a chain made of iron. Regardless, they are both a chain. Regardless, they are both shackles. So, the moment you get trapped by these shackles, you will have to come for the next birth. Therefore, devote yourself to your one friend, for he is but you. Love him and be free. This is something that we absolutely need to remember, remind ourselves, and live with. So, Priyavrata was the second son of Manu. At an early age, he had learned the spiritual truths at the feet of his master Narad. Now he was ready to renounce the world and take sannyas. Manu wanted him to remain in the world and live as a royal king ruling the earth. But Priyavrata would not listen to him. One day, Narad and Priyavrata were sitting and discussing the sacred truths. The teacher and the taught were both enjoying the divine beauty of the discourse. At this time, Brahmaji appeared before them. They felt the presence of a heavenly being and immediately stood up to receive him. Brahmaji was pleased by this gesture and smiled lovingly at them. To Priyavrata, he said, learn to surrender yourself to the divine will. Your father Manu, your teacher Narad, and I, all of us obey the divine will. A human being must go through birth and death, pleasure and pain, happiness and misery. As a man, after a bad dream, wakes up and remembers it, but is not attached to it, so too a free soul is unattached to his karma. A man may run away from the world and its attractions, but if his mind is obsessed with passions, they will follow him wherever he goes. But if a man is devoted to God, he remains in the world with a pure heart. It is my wish that you should live on and rule the land as a king, keeping your mind free from passions and desires. Priyavrata accepted this as a command. After some years, he took a wife. She gave birth to 10 sons and a daughter. Priyavrata ruled the land zealously and in later life, under the guidance of his teacher Narad, took the vows of sannyas. His heart's dearest wish was fulfilled and he was united with God. Before we move on to the story of Rishabdev, who was a descendant of Priyavrata, what do we need to learn from the story of Priyavrata? What is it that Brahmaji was telling him? See, you can take sannyas, you can renounce, you can abstain and leave the world and go somewhere in isolation, in forest and in jungle. But if your mind is still occupied by these passions, desires, calm, then you will find something over there in the forest, in the jungle. The story of Bharat, which is going to come now, later on, is exactly going to teach you that. He had abstained, he had renounced everything, but then eventually he got attached to a little baby deer, and then everything went awry from there. So there is no need to run away from the world and its attractions. You can still remain there but live with a pure heart. So now, moving on to the story of Rishabdev. He was born to his virtuous parents after they had offered many prayers to Sri Vishnu. Rishabh was himself an avatar of Vishnu. That is why he is also known as Rishabdev. Rishabh grew up to be a lovable, gifted, and self controlled young man. He studied under a preceptor and later married Jayanti. Jayanti was one of the daughters of Indra. Rishabh had great control over his body and his mind. Gradually, as knowledge grew within him that there is but one God in all beings and things, he came to look upon all with an equal eye. Therefore, it was natural for everyone, whether high or low, rich or poor, to love him. Rishabdev was a Jivan Mukt, and with his mind free and his heart pure, he engaged in activities for the welfare of his subjects. He was the friend of all beings, he sympathized with them and was kind and loving to all. He, his rule was a happy one. There was peace and contentment everywhere. He taught his sons to be not only good kings but also men of truth and perfection. He said, one must have a body to live in this world. શરીર તો બહુ જ ઉપયોગી છે આ જીવનમાં અને આ સંસારમાં જીવવા માટે. But it must not be given up to sensuous delights and pleasures which can be had even by dogs and pigs. Manusya Janmani Durlabdha, the rarity and preciousness of this human form, is not is so that you can engage in pursuits which are very important and of higher order. All the other sensuous delights can also be enjoyed in the form of a dog or a bull or a pig. So, this human form, this human body, must be used wisely as an instrument to serve the Jeev residing in it. It must be used by man to practice tap, which is the highest activity for him. Having taught them the philosophy of right living, he handed over his kingdom to his eldest son Bharat and went to a place outside his kingdom where he was not known. There he took the vow of Ajagra, staying in one place, eating whatever food came his way. Slowly he advanced in his tap. His siddhis, his yogic power started manifesting in him, but he ignored them. Swami Paramatmanandi says that the siddhis, you can get many powers, you can become mighty, but you can never become almighty. So deeper and deeper, ignoring all his siddhis, he went into meditation till at last he was merged with the blessed Lord. Then one day, the tops of the bamboo forest where he was living caught fire, and in the surrounding flames he gave up his body. Kings such as these have been the salt of the earth, and they were all the glorious children of this country. Now comes the incredible story of King Bharat. So, it has always been the custom in ancient India that when a man had got his daughters married and his sons well established in life, he would retire to the forest and spend the rest of his life in prayer and meditation. This was the duty of every man, whether he was a priest, a king, a merchant, or a laborer. Dharma to serve. Bharat was a mighty monarch of his time. So when he had done his duty by his people, his children, and his country, he left his palace gave up his wealth and power, and withdrew into the forest. One morning, the people in the palace woke up to find that the king was not there. This meant that he had donned the robes of a mendicant. Bharat's son was placed on the throne, and life went on as normal. King Bharat went to the banks of river Gandaki. He built himself a small hut of reeds thatched with leaves. He chose for his meditation the most sacred Gayatri mantra. Thus passed many days, months, and years, and Bharat enjoyed perfect peace and tranquility in his heart. One early morning, હવે તમે જુઓ કે માયા કેવી રીતે બધું ફેરવી નાખે છે. How does Maya take away all the progress in one fell swoop? One early morning, the sun was slowly rising over the horizon. Bharat had just bathed in the river. He had offered the last oblations to the rising sun, and clad in deer skin, he was preparing for his meditation. A doe, which had strayed from the herd of deer, felt thirsty and came to the river to quench its thirst. Just then, in a nearby jungle, a lion roared. એક માતા હરણ નદીમાં પાણી પીવા આવ્યા એના ગ્રુપથી છૂટા પડીને તે જ વખતે એક સિંહે મોટી ગર્જના કરી. The mother deer was with the young. The lion's roar frightened her so much she delivered a baby fawn in the middle of the river. ત્યાં ને ત્યાં જ એને ગર્ભાધાન થઈ ગયું. Somehow she managed to get back to the bank where, due to extreme shock and exertion, she died almost immediately. The baby fawn, with no one to care for it, was being slowly swept down by the river. નદીમાં જેનો જન્મ થયો માતા બહાર આવીને ત્યાં ને ત્યાં જ the mother passed away. પણ એ બચ્ચું હજી નદીમાં હતું અને સ્ટ્રગલ કરી રહ્યું હતું. ભરત આ બધું જોતા હતા. Bharat had watched this small drama from his hermitage. Now, seeing the urgency of the situation, he rose at once from his seat of meditation and jumped into the river to rescue that little animal. He saw that the poor thing was cold and frightened. Gently, he carried it in his arms back to the hermitage. There, he lit a fire and warmed it back to life. તરત જ નદીમાં કૂદી પડ્યા, બચ્ચાને લઈ આવ્યા, ઠંડુ હતું, ધ્રુજતું હતું, તો આગ કરી પોતાના આશ્રમમાં અને ત્યાં એને ગરમાટો આપીને પાછું એને જીવિત કર્યું. જીવિત જ હતું પણ એને પાછું સ્વસ્થ કર્યું. નાવ આ કેટલું સરસ and it is such a beautiful act. કેટલું સત્કર્મ કહેવાય, isn't it? But alas, this proved to be the spiritual downfall of Bharat. તમે લોકો બી વિચારશો કે what just happened? Why is this a spiritual downfall? This is what happened. Bharat now had become very fond of that baby deer. He looked after it with paternal care. આસક્તિ આવી ગઈ, attachment આવી ગઈ. He fed it with soft green grass and juicy fruits till it grew up to be a beautiful deer. Now it so happened that instead of turning more and more towards God, his mind turned more and more towards deer. In the evening, when he should have been meditating upon the Lord, he would anxiously be waiting for the deer to come back from its rompings in the forest. He would sit at the door of his ashram in deep concern and wonder, "Oh, why has my little one not come home yet? Is it in trouble? Has a lion attacked it or a tiger eaten it up?" આવી જ રીતે ઘણા વર્ષો વીતી ગયા જ્યાં ભરતનું મન એ હરણમાં ચોંટી રહ્યું ઈશ્વરની જગ્યાએ. The noble king who had given up wealth and power, the rule of an entire country, જે પોતાનું રાજ્ય, જે પોતાનું બધો જ wealth એટલે ધન અને શક્તિ બધું જ છોડીને આવેલા, એમનું મન એ હરણમાં ફસાઈ ગયું હતું. So many who had Bharat had made his mind pure and free from attachment had now become so attached to a little deer rescued from a running stream that he had completely stopped his devotional practices. The more fond he grew of the deer, the less did he think of God. The time came for Bharat to die. મૃત્યુનો સમય આવ્યો. And as he lay there, waiting for death, the deer stood by his side like a faithful son. The deer even shed tears of sorrow. Bharat was so touched by this that his last thought, instead of that being of God, became of deer. મૃત્યુ સમયે પણ એના મનમાં મગજમાં એ હરણના જ ખ્યાલ હતા, ઈશ્વરનું કોઈ ખ્યાલ નહોતું. Now, we have always been told that a man's last thought determines his future life. So Bharat was born again as a deer. ક્યાંય મુક્તિના માર્ગ હતો અને ક્યાંય આસક્તિમાં ફસાઈ તો હવે આવતો જન્મ પણ હરણ તરીકે એનો થયો. But luckily, he was born with the memory of his past life, because no devotion or prayers can ever go waste. But being in an animal body, he could not speak. He left his dear family in the hills and came to the Pulaha ashram on the banks of the river Gandaki. Here he would listen to the talks of rishis, hear readings of the Upanishad, and eat the remains of the offering. પણ ધ્યાન મેડિટેશન ના કરી શક્યું કારણ કે એની યોની એ હરણની હતી, એક પશુની હતી, મનુષ્યની નહોતી. He would patiently wait for his time when he could give up his dear body because it made meditation impossible for him. After his dear birth, Bharat was reborn as the youngest son in the family of a wealthy Brahmin. This Brahmin was a very good man. Bharat had not forgotten the experiences of his two previous births. He still remembered the pains and pangs caused by attachment. So, in this life, he would not even talk. He shunned Sang, any company of any kind. People soon took him to be a madman. His father and mother, however, treated him like a normal child. But soon enough, they died and left him to the care of his elder brothers and wives. These elder brothers, very sad to say, did not take very good care of him. They made him do all the heavy work, and their wives too treated him very unkindly. They would not even give him enough food or clothing. But Bharat uttered not a word in protest or anger. He would obey them, and with perfect peace and quiet of mind, he would do the work allotted to him. Whether it was fetching and carrying or ploughing the fields, sometimes when they lost their temper with him, he would go and sit under a tree till their anger had cooled off. Then he would go back to the house. A robber, Daku, once wanted to offer a sacrifice, and a Manushya Bali to the goddess Bhadrakali, as he wanted to be blessed with a son. But it so happened that the victim who they had caught, because it was a human sacrifice, untied himself and ran away. The band of robbers looked high and low for him, but all in vain. જેની ભલી આપવાની હતી એ ભાગી ગયું. અને જ્યારે એ લોકો શોધતા હતા, they came across this insane looking Bharat sitting under a tree, watching and keeping guard over a field. They caught him and took him to the chief, who was very pleased to see a very strong looking man as a victim for sacrifice. The robbers then bathed Bharat in fragrant waters, gave him new clothes, gold ornaments, sandalwood paste, flower garlands, and fed him a good meal. Then they took him and tied him to a post. The fires were lit, and as the mantras were being chanted, the chieftain drew out his sword and raised it to cut off Bharat's head. Bhadrakali, the goddess, could bear this no longer. In her fury, she emerged out of her statue and snatched away the weapon from the hand of the chief. Then, still trembling with rage, she chopped off his head as well as the heads of all his kinsmen. Then she set Bharat free. Bharat, whose mind was so absorbed in God that he did not even know that he had just been saved from a terrible death. He was so involved with God. One day it so happened that the palki of King Rahuguna was passing by. One of the bearers of the palki suddenly fainted, and Bharat, who was sitting quietly under a tree, was forced to take his place. He took the pole of the palki and placed it on his shoulders, but his step was unsteady. બધાની જોડે કદમથી કદમ મિલાવવા પડે પાલખીમાં. But his step was unsteady, for his heart was full of mercy and he walked slowly, lest he should tread upon an ant or a beetle. Now, it must have been terribly uncomfortable to be carried in a jolting palki. King Rahuguna looked out and saw that his new bearer, although strong and sturdy, was constantly hopping and jerking. So he called out and said, "Oi, you fool! Put down the pole and rest a while if you are tired." "Yes, rest if you are tired, though you look to me as strong as two oxen put together." બે બળદ ભેગા કર્યા હોય એટલી શક્તિ તારામાં છે, પણ તને થાક લાગતો હોય તો તું આરામ કર. Bharat then lay down the pole. He smiled, and for the first time in his life he opened his lips to speak. પહેલી વખત જીવનમાં બોલ્યો. "O king, whom do you call fool? Whom do you call strong? If it is this body you are addressing, then it is made of the same flesh and blood as yours. I am no madman, king. My mind is steadily fixed upon the Lord. But this body did not want to trample poor and innocent crawling worms. Therefore it went slow. The true self never varies, for it has nothing to do with the body. It knows no command because it is neither master nor the slave. It is the same self everywhere in the universe. Then who should command and who should obey? Realize this great truth, O king, that you too may come to know this self. King Rahugun was astonished to hear Bharat's words of wisdom. He got down from his palki and bowed down before him, full length, Shashtanga. Pardon me for insulting you, O holy sage, for I did not know your greatness. I wish to learn more about this self from you. Please teach me, for I now consider myself as your disciple. Then Bharat sat down under a tree and Rahugun sat at his feet. King, he said Bharat, to know oneself is the highest knowledge. Atmagnan is the highest knowledge. પોતાની જાતને જાણવું, પોતાની જાતને ઓળખવું. But one cannot seek it in this world of constant change. When the mind is associated with the three guna, sattva, rajas, and tamas, it causes bondage and suffering. When it is free from them, it brings peace and happiness and constantly freedom. And consequently, freedom. જ્યારે આ મન મગજ બુદ્ધિ સત્વ રજસ અને તમસના ગુણોથી ઉપર નીકળી જાય ત્યારે જ તમને મુક્ત કરે છે. One cannot attain this knowledge by studying the Vedas, nor by penance, nor by performing good deeds, but by being in the company of pure and holy. સત્સંગ સંત સમાગમ જેને કહીએ કે જ્યારે સંતનો સત્સંગ થાય ત્યારે આ બધું જ્ઞાન થાય. The world is like a thick dark forest where men have lost their way. In this jungle there are robbers and bandits who rob them of their most valuable possessions. The robbers and bandits are none other than the sense objects and their experiences. વિષય અને એના સુખ છે. They rob man of his true heritage, his own divine nature. Hungry and thirsty man looks around for something that will satisfy him. He sees a mirage and runs towards it, but alas, how can he quench his thirst at the waters of a mirage? So round and round the forest he goes, hungry, thirsty, and bruised. The mirage is the mirage of happiness which man is constantly chasing in this world. સુખ સુખને એક છલાવો છે, એક ભ્રાંતિ છે. Chasing one fleeting happiness after another, he gets tired but never finds the happiness he is looking for. Then finally, a kindly friend takes him by the hand and shows him the way out of the jungle. This kindly friend is the compassionate teacher. He leads man out of this forest of samsara and teaches him that knocking about in the world he will never find lasting happiness, for the world has no power to give it. અપૂર્ણ છે, જે અપૂર્ણ છે એ પૂર્ણ તમને કેવી રીતે આનંદ આપી શકે? અપૂર્ણ સુખ આપી શકશે. Therefore, he should seek the Lord. Now, King, cut your bonds of attachment. Embrace the world in your love for him. You shall reach him, who dwells in the heart of all. This holy land of ours has always been the land of sages and men of wisdom, for it is only here that the supreme ideals of love, service, worship, and meditation are taught as the means to self-realization. We are taught to love and serve him, not for any material gains or benefits, but for the sake of love and service themselves. In all these stories, we see how mighty kings gave up their throne and power because of their love for truth. They renounced all that they may be one with God. As noble kings, they dedicated themselves to the service of their subjects. As sages of the forest, they served the entire mankind. Thus, loving him, serving him, worshipping him, and meditating upon him, rise to be men and women of spiritual glory and wisdom. See him within your own hearts. Realize him to be the very life of every living creature. આવતી વખતે next time when we meet, we will learn about the story of Ajamil. But from the story of Bharat and Rahuguna and all his three lives, there is so much to unpack and learn. So I will do a little bit of revision over there from the story of Bharat because there is so much to unpack. And then we will look at the story of Ajamil and Indra and Vrit. So thank you so much. Namaste and Pranam.